Wow, so very excited today to have a Colorado pioneer and legend. As we look at celebrating the 50th year of Title IX, there's a lot of different associations that would probably have to search for an opportunity to have a sit down with a someone who planted a lot of seeds and made a difference within a state. And we're lucky enough to have one of the first female assistant commissioners transitioning to associate commissioner in our own state. So I just want to thank you first of all for being here, Sharon. As we look at the 50th anniversary of Title IX, and I think it's important to remind people what truly the law says, and it's that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from, participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. And those 37 words impactfully changed the course of women and girl opportunities across the nation. And so again, today I have the opportunity to have you, and I've already said, we are just gonna make this a back and forth kind of exchange. And so first of all, Sharon, just give us a little bit of your background, and then we'll just go into some really good questions around just your experiences and historical perspective.
Now, how far do you want me to go back in my background? See, I was there because I'm probably one of the older ones she could be interviewing. So anyway, my background began as an English and physical education teacher, but I went over to physical education because I saw a need there, and the need that girls needed participation and they needed to grow into athletics. And so I started girls gymnastics at Bear Creek High School and Lakewood High School, and we did a lot of conquering along the way and became a lot of state association champions in girls gymnastics. And so we kept evolving all the time and kept getting our girls involved in track and field and tennis. And as you know, physical educators were the ones who really taught the girls all their skills and all the things they needed to do to practice, to use their brain, to use their physical abilities. And those physical educators began to organize informally play days or play dates.
Absolutely.
And that was the way that they saw for their avenue of participation. And as that grew, and one teacher would call the other and say, "You want to meet and just play basketball on the weekend?" And we'd say, "Yeah," and I'd drive to Colorado Springs with my students and we'd just play basketball. And that grew, it grew until they organized the Girls Athletic Association, what was called the GAA. And they kept things going and kept things going until they came to CHSAA and said, "We would like you to be in on this leadership." And that's when we developed the Colorado Girls Sports Committee. Committee from across the state, and they came in and helped us in our deliberations as to which sport should become the first state tournament. And it was gymnastics.
So this was prior to the law.
Yeah.
So Colorado truly had that advocacy to support girls in participation prior to any mandates or any kind. That is exciting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
And when I first took my job, I went down to Colorado Springs and interviewed a woman down there who had been playing basketball, not organized. They would just pick up and go have games on the weekend. But she reminded me of the ones that came way before us, and that was the World War II women who worked in the factories.
Absolutely.
And they're the ones who figured out they had stamina and the energy to go out and play sports. And also the one attitude they had to work against was that women really just wanted to play sports for recreation and exercise. They might swim a little bit, but that's not really what they wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Competition.
Mm-hmm.
Competition. So I'm gonna delve into a question. Gosh, thank you for that, because I had no idea. Because my first question was, oh, what is CHSAA's first state championship, or what did we organize as a state association? And it just does my heart happy or proud to know that the advocacy and the leadership of women within the state of Colorado said, no, girls want to do more than have a play date. They want to compete. And however we need to do that, and we'll organize that and then bring that to CHSAA's table and say, how do we become inclusive in the opportunities that you're offering? So that was great. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say something about advocates, but you might be asking that question later.
Sure.
The advocates that we have, and some people don't realize that the State Department of Education, Susan Schaefer.
Oh, amazing.
And I developed the first state conference for all athletic directors. And that conference was titled Strategies to Strengthen Support for Girls Athletics. And as we did this conference, you walked up to the podium, you wondered how you were going to be received, because you looked in that front row, all male athletic directors. Fun guys, competent guys, but they were looking and you could see the wheels begin to spin. What are we getting into?
Right.
But as we grew from there, school districts began to hire their own athletic directors for girls' sports, like Alice Barron in Jefferson County,
Yes.
Bev Peterson, who's passed in Denver Public Schools, yeah, and Ruby Miller in the Commerce City area, and Gib Funk and Solly Rosso and Shirley Snyder down in the southern part of the state.
Right.
So all of those people were advocates for us. But I have to say, the two commissioners that hired the women in their state associate offices were gutsy, risk-taking, Ray Ball in our state to bring sports into Colorado. And they said, we're taking a stand.
Absolutely.
And we're going to promote girls' sports.
Absolutely. I think that what you and I have both seen, as much as we can have the sisterhood, right? And we speak the language that we know makes the difference. Without that additional support of really truly the visibility of the decision makers, the ones who have the power to change the narrative, you and I both don't sit in these positions, right? It took the gutsy, the courageous leader to say, no, we are stronger because we're embracing diversity, whether that's gender diversity or ethnicity or racial diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we both are the recipients of that gutsy leader that says, not only am I going to hire you, Rhonda, you're in charge of ice hockey. And I'm, what?
So Sharon, you're going to take over skiing.
Yes.
You know?
So now, you just recently there have been some studies, and it's really an empowerment, and it speaks to why it's important to have girls and women involved in sport. 94% of women that run companies or sit in C-suites, are directors, are commissioners, participated in athletics or activities in high school. Mm-hmm. 52% participated in athletics at the collegiate level. So the skill sets learned through participation, and it's not always positive. Sometimes it's how you recover from failure or losses or any of those things that create that kind of leadership perseverance that is seen, and companies want that within their organizations. The question I have for you is, often environments, we know that still women are disproportionately represented in not only the athletic field, but in a lot of those areas. Often environments are created with the intentional and unintentional bias that aren't part of our professional pathway. So can you share an incident or two from your professional journey that, as we sit here today, would cause us both to pause and kind of roll our eyes and say, that wouldn't happen today?
Well, before Title IX, I had several years that I was a woman in a man's world. So I had to be able to cross over the bridge to invite them to work with me. And I say invite because not everyone wants to work with you, but you have to really work hard at trying to smooth over those relationships. So I think a lot of times, the first bias that I remember was the one where girls just wanted to exercise. So that finally dissolved. Then another bias was that women didn't have the stamina, and of course they do. And I think the athletic directors were looking at their own local schools, their school districts, their communities, and saying, how are we going to introduce this into all those avenues? And I think when I didn't want to be negative and say, oh, so-and-so did this, or this athletic director didn't do this, because over time they did evolve. But I remember there was a school district that the girls would go home right after school and take care of the smaller kids. Once the sports were sanctioned, they didn't go home after school. They stayed and participated in sports. So with the unintentional biases, I sometimes look at them resolving around fears.
Mm-hmm.
Fear.
Perceptions.
And perception. How are we going to support, budget-wise, a program? Because we designed this program for one avenue, that was Boys Scouts. How are we going to now introduce another program? Are the girls going to draw? Are they going to be revenue producers? What are we going to do with the facilities? Are we going to have locker room problems, trainer problems? Who's going to get prime time? And so all of those things were fears that they had to deal with. And sooner or later, they got very creative and they found that they could get through all those obstacles.
Right.
And
unfortunately, though, I mean, in Colorado, with the leadership of you and your colleagues, those were resolved without the law being enacted.
right.
But if we didn't have the law, I fear that there would be some subset groups that those fears would continue to be the arguments that they would have used not to provide those opportunities for girls and women, don't you think?
Oh, yes. But as I say, we rolled through those. Some of
Yes.
those were slow coming, but they did come to know. And often I say, when they say, well, will the girls' teams draw crowds? And I said, it'll take time, but they will draw. And how appropriate, as right now when Olympics are beginning,
Yes.
who doesn't want to sit down and watch girls' gymnastics and track and field?
Unbelievable. Yes, and you look at even the marketing value, right, of some of the other day, you start looking at commercials that are promoting the Olympics and which Olympic hopefuls for gold medals are receiving the Visa commercials or the milk commercials. And you see Simone Biles. I mean, right now we're just being inundated because she's just so amazing. I mean, there was a time when we really truly had a Michael Phelps or some of those, but right now it seems to be the spotlight and there's marketing campaigns to say, how is our product going to get out there? And Simone Biles tends to be that one brand that a lot of people are around, which is girls gymnastics, right? And then I saw a couple track ones the other day where one of the track athletes, and I'm trying to think of her name, but she was stretching on the track, and it was a cellular phone commercial, and it ends with her saying how to use cellular or something like that. So you are absolutely spot on that right now, every 4 years, the embracement around athletics in the Olympics tends to be focused on some of the women that we have this feeling are going to be gold medalists and represent our country at the highest level of amateur athletics, supposedly.
Right. And no wonder athletics is so important because it's a precursor to leadership and success. How many corporations could you walk into and say, did you participate in high school athletics? And I'll bet you their answer will be yes.
Well, Sharon, I sit here as a product of participation and opportunities that were afforded to me. I started off as a gymnast and slowly went to athletics and volleyball and cheerleading. I keep telling everybody it is a sport. I love that argument when I have to go back. But definitely as the first African American woman in over 96-year history in the nation to sit in this chair, I know that my pathways and doors were open because of athletics. And people tend to think that you have to be like a all-time 18-time All-American or a state champion or a national champion, and it's really truly not what you gained and the awards that you won, but what are the skill sets that become embedded in who you are and your character and how you do business that opens their doors. So it's really not about whether or not you, again, are a state champion. It's whether or not you participate and you're part of a team and you're part of something bigger than yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So as we get through this, I want to say thank you on behalf of thousands of our female student athletes, administrators across the state. I stand on your shoulders. I stand on Leslie Moore's shoulders. I stand on Chris Fuller. I have been blessed in the state of Colorado. When I was hired at CHSAA, they took this 32-year-old that was just fiery and said, you know what? And you guys all brought me under your umbrella and you mentored me. And you helped me to get to this place where I could say yes if this job was offered or any other position was offered. So I want to say thank you on behalf of thousands of us that those doors were open. But I also talk about the glass ceiling being broken, right? And so I want to say that because what the seeds that you planted really truly haven't stopped being cultured, I would say. I mean, we have come a long way, but we still have ways to go, right? The fact that we even have to remind people, the fact that we even have to talk about some of those things that although they seem like they happened 30 years ago or 40 years ago, the women in my profession right now, we still deal with some of that. How do we de-escalate the perceptions around strong women leaders? How do we de-escalate that we are not really trying to change the structure, but that with this inclusivity, everything becomes better. And so, first of all, again, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your time today, and I do want to end with you kind of concluding the conversation around Title IX. We are so blessed, first of all, to have the ability to celebrate this. It started with maybe 350,000 girls participating, and now we're well over 3+ million across it, and not only talking about high school athletes. So just imagine when you start trickling down to club and elementary, middle school, recreational, and then you start going above when you start looking at professional athletes and collegiate athletes. So I just want to end with just a positive. I don't know that you could have imagined back then from 1972 that you would just see this growth and what it would produce in the women that are leading our country. So I'm going to leave you with that final kind of comment.
And I want to go back because when I was in high school and college, we didn't have the opportunity to participate. And in college, what I did get to do, besides cheerleading, was synchronized swimming. So that was an avenue, not competitive, but for show. Right. And I want to thank not only you, but all the people that supported my efforts when I was in this office. And I want to thank the athletic directors, the principals, the ADs, the school boards that came on board to say, yes, we think this is an important part of our education.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that down the line under your leadership, I know that we'll see a lot more opportunities. You know, I have grand ideas, I'm sure you have too, of other sports.
Oh, yes.
Badminton, archery. Yes. And I wanted to bring in sometime when I was still here, but it didn't get very far, was a family state tournament. In other words, as an idea,
Right.
5K race,
Oh, God.
where the whole family,
Oh, that's
every time
cool.
they cross the line together,
Yeah.
however you devise it, at the end there would be a family state tournament trophy.
That is hilarious.
It would bring out.
I don't think that's going to happen under my leadership. No, I'm kidding.
That would bring in neighbors and families and communities.
Yes.
Talk about drawing.
Yes, and
So-
when you say that, and that's the beauty of CHSAA, probably, because again, you open that door, and the same person you would with hired me,
Yeah.
and I think you prepared him for a person like me
Yeah.
that just comes in with ideas that pushes the envelope, and so when you say that, I'm thinking, hey, that'd be cool at state cross country to have a 5K walk or run for families prior to. So that's a good thing. But I got to tell you, when you say, progressionally, how we're still thinking that way and
Yeah.
provide. We had our first all girls wrestling state tournament this year.
Great.
We had unified bowling, which is co-ed. So we are continuously looking for opportunities, not only for female and girl student athletes, but even some of our more marginalized and populations that haven't had that opportunity. So I think once you start to chip away at some of the things that are in place that have been barriers in the past, it just opens the door for you to say, well, what about this? Well, what about this? So I just feel like you and I have been blessed to be in Colorado where that is embraced.
Yeah.
And you and I both know we speak nationally, trying to empower other women to have the kind of voice that we've been given in Colorado. And we don't take that for granted because we see our colleagues across the nation and sometimes their voices are stagnated. But we've been given kind of that opportunity. So I'm gonna again come back to you, and I want you to be the final, because this is truly about the I keep saying, only because I'm by this plant probably, the seeds that have been planted, but we are definitely better because of you and the women before us that allowed us to be able to sit where we sit now, to be difference makers in the state and nationally.
Yeah, and I want to say one thing too, because like sports, I love golf, and I participate right now.
Yes.
I just shot a 48 yesterday for
Wow.
9 holes, and so that's what things that athletics do. Plus the socialization you have with all of the people that you're competing with, that you're playing with, and it's extremely important. It carries you through life.
It is. Lifelong friendships. I think every time I hear an administrator that is retiring from this profession, one of the things they will miss are the friendships and the support systems, because even then, in this space that we're in, there's this collaborative team effort. Whether you're in Yuma, whether if you're in Lamar, whether you're in Denver South High School, there is this unity around our commitment to kids and what we do. And so that was a
And
great.
those girls, those kids are the ones who develop bonds, who learned how to network,
Yes,
and you know what? They even appreciate their opponents.
yes,
And to me, that's great, and that's that friendship. I mean,
Yes.
you can be an opponent one day in
Yes.
volleyball, and you could be best friends with that other volleyball player on the other team and be doing whatever else you want to do.
absolutely.
So, difference makers, risk takers, all of them have a passion, I think, and the passion they have helps them overcome the obstacles that become before them to accomplish what they want to do. And kind of in closing my remarks is Title IX was the catalyst, but we did the work, and the struggle was worth it.
Wow. Well, thank you. I know I've said that many times, but anybody who knows me knows that not a surface speaker. This is truly an honor to have the opportunity to have this one-on-one with you and to share this with not only our Colorado membership, but the people across the nation that don't have. Look at you, I love you. So definitely thank you all, and thank you for Sharon for helping us to kick off Title IX, the 50th anniversary.
Yes,
So,
thank you.